First news story of the week. Nothing really to do with CES, but rumours have emerged. I'm not quite sure the extent to which they've been officially confirmed yet, but key first party exclusives from Microsoft, currently found only on Xbox consoles and PC, may well be migrating into the realms of multi platform. And previously, Microsoft has had some success in porting titles to Nintendo Switch, the Ori games. Hellblade, excellent ports, I'd say. But the concept that we're actually going to be seeing titles on PlayStation is very intriguing. Obviously, there is some precedence there in terms of Minecraft, but this is very definitely a shift of sorts. John, what actually has been officially confirmed as of yet? Are we
Um,
aware of that?
I don't believe anything's actually been confirmed. There's been some games rumored. I think Hi-Fi Rush has been mentioned.
Yeah,
Sea of Thieves, I think, also got some mention somewhere.
yeah.
Uh, but it's a delicate topic. But I think there's definitely some things to discuss here.
Yeah, so where do you want to begin? I mean, what do you make of it all, first of all? I
Um,
mean, there are the Xbox diehards who aren't really happy about this at all because, they're worried about the future of the console. Why should Xbox make consoles if they're essentially releasing all of their games on all available systems?
so I actually can kind of understand where that's coming from. Based on the traditional model that consoles have operated in. And this is obviously a big change. And I've been kind of thinking about what that could mean for the future. What does Xbox look like? And I do feel like perhaps Microsoft is slowly changing what Xbox is, fundamentally. I think the rise of Game Pass is kind of part of this, perhaps. Because, if they're just playing the traditional put out your console, sell the boxed games kind of thing, they're not matching with Nintendo or Sony right now, right? Like in terms of raw numbers. But
Mm,
Microsoft is a gigantic, very successful company and primarily a services driven company that also does hardware. So it got me kind
mhm.
of thinking about what could Xbox look like in the future if this meant something. It's like, and I'm curious what you guys think of this idea. What if they had sort of like, I think they should continue to sell Xbox consoles going forward and deliver them. But if you look at what's happened with the portable PCs as of late, the rise of Steam Deck, and those types of competitors, many of which, well, all of which are pretty much designed to run Windows. Imagine a future where the Xbox is almost like a Steam OS like thing, where it's essentially a version of Windows, but it's got a very robust front end system that functions as well or similar to the Steam Deck. And then you also, so you sell, say, you can have portable PCs like that, but you also sell a console, which is also running this OS and behaves much
Hmm.
like that. And these games run just natively on your PC. And then the Xbox becomes this whole just like thing that exists, a marketplace, like a service where you're playing Xbox games, right? You can still buy your box or you can buy a handheld PC. They could actually do both. Like imagine they get the Surface Group involved and you have a boxed console for your TV, but you also have something like a Steam Deck equivalent. You brand that right, you make it look really nice, you really beef up Windows to run this kind of stuff. They're also, I mean, they're becoming one of the biggest publishers in the entire gaming space right now. I mean, they've got a ton of developers under their roof, which also I think would tie into why they might want to sell on other platforms too,
Right.
right? Because like they want to make that money now that they've got all this power. I think that there's this misconception where it feels like they want to just make their traditional console model the quote unquote king, right? But I think they have a much deeper strategy than that, and one that is more focused, obviously, on making money, which is something Microsoft has traditionally excelled in. I think we can all agree. Uh, so, like, I could see a future where they are still doing their more traditional console, maybe in a slightly different way, but they're selling their games on their own platforms, but then also offer certain games on other platforms as well, and basically
Hmm.
pulling in sales from wherever they can. I mean, if somebody's buying these games on a Switch or a PlayStation, Microsoft's still making money from that, right? Like,
Mm.
and if you see the value of their services, like you see like, well, if I subscribe to this or if I have this box, then I just get all these other games as well, and I don't have to spend $70 on that game. uh I don't know, it this whole thing, it's I'm kind of talking in circles here, but I'm trying to imagine where they might be coming from with what it looks like. And I kind of feel like, to really like, they could be looking towards sort of disrupting the market in their own way, rather than just trying
Yeah.
to chase the traditional model. Because I think Xbox is kind of moving away from that. I don't like them moving away from, say, physical discs and whatnot, but I think that's what they want to do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that if they do so, that opens the doors to approach just consoles and like where they put their software in a completely different way. And they kind of enter this different zone than Sony and Nintendo. Because I mean, like, Nintendo without a console is what? Like, I feel like that's so central to their brand. I think Sony is a hardware company first that also makes games and does the PlayStation and all that. And Microsoft is a software services company first and foremost that also happens to do hardware. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they can leverage all that experience to create something new, find new success in these areas. So I don't know. That's kind of a broader take on the situation. Maybe we can get into some of the individual things about these specific games, and maybe it doesn't mean any of this. What do you
Yeah,
guys think? What
well,
do you guys think?
I think I'm agreeing with you 100% there, John. I mean, if you think about it, the focus from Microsoft now is obviously on Games Pass and subscribers there, right?
Sure.
And what does this mean? I mean, essentially, what you want to have is as many monthly active users as possible. Now, you're not going to have an Xbox app on PlayStation or Switch
No,
consoles,
I don't
but I
think so.
noticed actually, based on your Prince of Persia review that I watched yesterday, John,
Yeah.
conceivably they could have an Xbox login. You know,
Why not?
you've got
I
an
think
Ubisoft
so.
Connect, you've got an Ubisoft Connect login on Prince of Persia. You've got the Bethesda logins. I mean,
We've had
they're
Steam
horrible. We
on
don't want them.
PlayStation, if I recall,
Three.
Yeah,
on PS3.
but you see where I'm heading there. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
conceivably those could be added as monthly active users to their ecosystem. They've got Call of Duty that's going to be doing something along those lines. Surely, you'd
Achievements
think.
as well, by the way. There's no Ubisoft and all them have their own, I think, list of that stuff. So you could technically be unlocking Xbox achievements
Yeah.
alongside,
You do it on
trophies or
PC.
whatever,
Why
right?
not?
You do
Like,
it on
who
PC.
cares?
Like, I feel like that's all possible.
So if you have a scenario where games debut on Xbox, PC, and Game Pass, and then a year later they're on the other consoles, what does that actually do strategically for Microsoft? What it does is, you know, expose those games to a new audience and potentially recruit them into Game Pass for the sequels or whatever that come along. It just makes a lot of sense, or it just sort of highlights that, hey, I've just paid money for these games, but on Game Pass I could actually subscribe per month and get the new releases for quote unquote free, really the subscription cost. And it's basically an evangelization system. But it
Yep.
does also mean, that there are going to be games coming out that are massively expensive to make that just kind of makes sense to put them on other platforms. I do note that the ones that I've looked into this now with the
Okay.
power of Google, and yes, it
You
turns
did
out
not
that
use Bing.
it's Jeff Grubb who has been apparently eyeing up Switch release for Sea of Thieves. Similar story from Axios journalist Stephen Totillo. I'm just
right.
quoting the Eurogamer news story here. So it does seem to be widely sourced. And there's also been these accompanying rumors that Hi-Fi Rush would appear on
Right.
Switch, might appear on PlayStation. Just kind of makes sense from my perspective. That's a great game that should just get better exposure.
Yeah, if you look at Hi-Fi Rush obviously did very well at the end of the year in terms of nominations. In fact, it was the one game that showed up on both, or on mine, Oliver, and Tom's games of the year list. But there's been a lot of talk about it in general. It's like interest is high again. I feel like putting it out on other platforms, that interest returns. People have been seeing all this, they want to buy it. But it's also going to continue to be on Game Pass. So people might say, well, get it there, get on PC, whatever. But then something like Sea of Thieves is a little different because it is a live service game. And actually one of the few that I actually enjoyed, I have to admit. I liked Sea of Thieves. I feel like that type of game specifically benefits from having more users. Wouldn't you agree? Like, you want more people in that ecosystem, more people playing that game.
Absolutely,
and if you can get it on other platforms, then there you go. It's a win.
Mm-hmm.
But what about like the big IPs though? And maybe you have an idea, and this is but stuff like Halo, Gears, Forza.
Why not? I mean,
do you think that could show up on these competing platforms?
I mean, I don't know if I can say if they will, but I would say just why not? Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 are so close to one another in the power levels, the DBZ power levels, that of course, why not have them running there? Have more people playing your Halo game across of everything. I'm not at all wedded to the concept that just because they also make consoles means the games that they make only should come out on the consoles that they produce. Otherwise, you wouldn't have stuff on PC, or you wouldn't have those breakaway examples like we talked about earlier with Minecraft Legends, MLB The Show. There's a handful. Helldivers 2, which is just coming out now on PC. So that's going to be day and date. For me, like, I really think that Microsoft has probably, and I feel there's like a certain resignation whenever it's talked about with Phil Spencer, that they know they lost the war and they need to prepare for a future that is different, and they have to disrupt to do that. And I think this is the best way to do it for them, because like, you're only having to have this limited market base of people on Xbox consoles for the foreseeable future. And why not open it up to the wider gaming public? I see, especially if Sony is so dominant, or if Nintendo Switch is so dominant, you want to foster relationships of the future, and just relying on the relationships that you formed in the past with a diehard fan base that just keeps and only buying Xbox stuff. I don't see that's like a viable future to grow. So if they're a business that likes money, this all makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, there's the worry that the console will become basically irrelevant to Xbox. That's just not going to happen, because Microsoft needs to have a way for people to easily access Game Pass, right? And an easily accessible way to do that, to get hold of those games. And you're not going to have Game Pass on PlayStation anytime soon. Even though, of course, EA and Ubisoft and whatnot have their subscription services available on PlayStation.
So it's very interesting. Like, at what point is there like a turning point? Because, like, you have like multiple stores on like various devices. The PC is an example. Android phones, I guess you can do that. I don't know. Like, there's like all these court cases, Epic, Tim Sweeney. Like, at what point is there just like a breaking down of walls, and walled gardens are declared not okay at some point, and you have to actually support other stores on your marketplace, even like on a closed system. I could see that happening in the future at some point in time, because especially like with this ABK Microsoft merger, like, you saw that Sony tried to argue that this is like bad for a variety of reasons, and it didn't go through. Like, I feel like then this is just in the opposite direction. Microsoft could argue for allowing Game Pass and their store, maybe with a percentage cut as a giveaway, like giving leeway to them. But I could see this totally happening in the next 10 years. I don't see it as inevitable.
And I think continuing to offer that console makes a ton of sense too, because yes, you can get into PC space, of course, but having that pre-configured box that you can just throw up on your TV and expect a good, solid experience from it is key. That's what a lot of people still want, right? And I think that's very smart. So
you need a vehicle to make this stuff more accessible, because it's a shame, but the PC is still somewhat impenetrable to many people. And it's the concept of just having a plug and play alternative, something like this.
Yeah, like that. Like that. Hey, Rich, I heard that might have fallen off the back of a truck. I was reading the comments. People were like, where did Rich get this thing? Like, they were saying basically, did Rich buy stolen goods was the question. Rich?
We can never know.
We'll never know.
Well, if it was stolen, they didn't steal the controller.
Yeah, that was in a different pile.
Oh yeah, that was in a
That
different
was a
pile.
different fuck.
Yeah, it was in a different track.
No, if you honestly go on Facebook Marketplace, I'm still seeing like £120 Xbox Series S consoles there. I mean, it's astonishing. I think it's like the tech giveaway of the century.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's just quite remarkable how much machine you're
Actually,
getting for so low a price on there.
Thinking about that, what if? So I mentioned earlier about the portable PCs refitting Windows to be more like a Steam Deck experience. What if in the future, when they roll out a new Xbox, they have a console and a handheld version, and the handheld one is more like the Series S, where it is more like a Steam Deck system, and maybe you can dock it still, but it behaves like the actual console they sell and everything. Like that's actually really compelling, right? I think that would be awesome.
It's an interesting idea. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea, but it does require quite a lot of developmental effort to create a portable
I agree. I think it would, but imagine, I'm just imagining them working with, like, say, NVIDIA or something, and like it's both in the new console and they have this handheld developed, which hopefully
like
should
the Switch 2.
like the Switch 2,
like Switch 2,
maybe more potent, but that sort of idea, I feel like that actually would be genuinely compelling and something new, different. That I don't think Sony's going to go back to that anytime soon. And if it's actually like a Series X, Series S relationship, they would run the same games, which is key.
It's an interesting idea. I think fundamentally, though, Microsoft are looking in terms of disruption now at this point. They've realized that the traditional console model isn't really doing them any favors anymore. There was the shift to PC and multi-platform development in that sense. And I don't think it's actually been bad for them or the games at all. Nope. When you think about it.
And I think it's just right now, development is expensive. These big games take so much money. Like Sony's been bringing games to the PC, right? I don't think they necessarily wanted to do that, given the way that they've always treated their platforms, right? But it's clearly become something that they've had to embrace to actually help pay for this stuff, perhaps. And it ended up working out well, but it's clear that these games just take a lot of money to make, and you got to find ways to make it back however you can. The only one I really see just kind of sticking to their guns is Nintendo. Right. And if there's ever a point where it's completely not viable, and I think it would be tough to get to that point for Nintendo, because they can eat some failures in a row, as we've seen before. I think Nintendo remains focused on their own very specific closed platform. And I saw people talking like, well, if the Switch gets Hi-Fi Rush, what is Nintendo giving in return? And I'm like, Hi-Fi Rush on the Switch benefits Microsoft much more than it benefits Nintendo, right? Like Nintendo, they don't really need it or care, I'm sure. It's just like another game on their platform, no matter how good it is, right? Like Nintendo is not going to part with their precious IP. I would say. I
think, what's quite interesting about the whole Nintendo thing is that people differentiate them from Sony and Microsoft when fundamentally they're all competing for the time of gamers.
Exactly. The time of gamers. It doesn't matter. The power doesn't matter.
Carve themselves off into this separate niche. Simply because they've got like a lower power platform, I think is quite remarkable. The power is almost irrelevant, seemingly, when you look at the amount of units they've sold and the success that they've enjoyed.
That's good.
Arguably,
it's good.
Yeah.
The direction of travel just seems to be that more Microsoft games are going to be appearing on more platforms simply by virtue of the kind of acquisitions that they've done. Activision, they're contractually bound to put Call of Duty on every system. Now, what's in it for Microsoft? Well, it's pretty obvious. If you subscribe to Game Pass, you kind of don't have to buy the games in the traditional sense. So that's, the funny thing is, though, that they have opened up this remarkable revenue stream from Game Pass subscribers where, if you want to play the game early, you end up paying an extra like $40 anyway.
Right.
They did it with Forza Horizon. They did it with Starfield. So it's quite interesting to see that they're still able to ramp up revenues in that way. Starfield had an amazing amount of concurrent users before it officially launched.
Officially launched. That was big. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess my message to the Xbox diehards is, kind of don't worry about it. The amount of games that are coming is not going to change. It's just going to be, and I don't think the concept of an Xbox console is going away anytime soon. You just don't, be too concerned when PlayStation is selling considerably more than Xbox. That's not really the end game for Microsoft anymore. I mean, they've kind of conceded that ground. I think Phil's comment was basically that the war for the digital library as we know it was waged in the last generation of PlayStation 1. And people want to be able to take their games going forward. Microsoft's response to that is basically to give you all of those games within a monthly subscription, which is a really interesting take. I guess we're going to be following this story with much interest, but right now there is no official confirmation whatsoever. We do have next week a new developer _direct.
Right. Yeah.
That'll be great.
I'm excited
about
about
games being shown off there.
Yeah, there's some great games being revealed there or re-revealed or whatever. But the point is, will we get any idea of strategy from that? Probably not. But it will sort of reinforce that there's some great stuff coming from Microsoft this year.